The walls of Montecito are crumbling, and this time there is nowhere left to hide. Meredith Mains, the 11th publicist to flee the Sussex circus in just 5 years, has officially handed in her resignation, and the timing could not be more damaging. Sources are now revealing that her departure was not some graceful career transition or a mutual parting of ways. No, this was an escape, a desperate sprint for the exit doors before the entire operation collapsed around her. Let that number sink in for a moment. 11 publicists, 5 years. That is not a communications department. That is a revolving door of professionals running for their lives. And Meredith Mains, a woman who built her career at Google, Hulu, and some of the most prestigious firms in America, lasted less than 12 months before she too decided enough was enough. But here is where it gets truly explosive. According to multiple sources now speaking to the press, Meredith's resignation landed in mid-November, just days after one of the most humiliating public relations disasters the Sussexes have ever faced, the Kris Jenner photo fiasco. You remember that catastrophe, right? The one where Meghan reportedly pressured the Jenner clan to post pictures proving she still runs in A-list circles. The one where Harry then allegedly panicked and demanded those same photos be scrubbed from the internet because he was caught on camera looking absolutely wasted while staring directly at Kris Jenner's chest. That was the final straw. That was the moment when even someone as accomplished as Meredith Mains reportedly looked at this operation and said, "I cannot save these people from themselves." And the sources are not holding back anymore. One insider revealed that when anything negative comes out, someone has to pay. Another called her tenure an absolute disaster from start to finish. A third dropped perhaps the most brutal assessment yet, claiming that Meghan will get disappointed by one thing and then ice someone out. She will never let you live it down or forget how you let her down. Does that sound like a healthy working environment to you? Does that sound like a place where talented professionals can thrive? Of course not. It sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like exactly the kind of toxic atmosphere that has now chased away 11 communications experts in half a decade. Meredith Mains is not going to come out and tell the world the truth. She is not going to hold a press conference and announce that working for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex was a miserable experience that she regrets. That is not how this industry works. She will smile, release a polished statement about pursuing new opportunities, and quietly warn every colleague she has to stay far away from Montecito. But make no mistake, the cracks are showing. The pattern is undeniable, and what insiders are finally revealing about what really happens behind those mansion doors is about to change everything you thought you knew about this couple. To understand why Meredith Mains finally reached her breaking point, you have to understand the absolute catastrophe that unfolded just days before her resignation, the Kris Jenner photo saga. A debacle so embarrassing, so poorly handled, that it reportedly became the final nail in the coffin for the Sussex communications team. Here is what sources claim happened. Meghan Markle, desperate to prove she still belongs among Hollywood royalty, allegedly made a direct call to the Jenner family. The request was simple but telling. Post photos of us together. Show the world that the Duchess of Sussex is still invited to the best parties, still rubbing shoulders with the most famous names in entertainment. According to insiders, this was not a casual ask between friends. This was a calculated move designed to feed her so-called Sussex squad with ammunition. Proof that Meghan remains relevant. Proof that the A-list doors have not slammed shut in her face. And the Jenners apparently complied. The photos went up. Mission accomplished, right? Wrong. Because what Meghan reportedly failed to anticipate was her own husband becoming the story for all the wrong reasons. Sources claim that Harry was captured in those images looking completely out of sorts, glassy-eyed, unfocused, and according to whispers now circulating through entertainment circles, appearing to stare directly at Kris Jenner in a way that was impossible to ignore. The internet noticed immediately. Comments flooded social media, and suddenly the photos meant to boost Meghan's image became a viral embarrassment for the entire Sussex brand. What happened next tells you everything you need to know about how this couple operates. Instead of riding out the storm or ignoring the chatter, Harry allegedly called the Jenners himself. Take the photos down, remove them immediately. The damage control was frantic, desperate, and far too late. The screenshots had already spread across every gossip site and social media platform imaginable. Now imagine you are Meredith Mains. You have spent your career managing communications for billion-dollar companies. You have navigated complex media landscapes for some of the biggest names in tech and entertainment. And now you are watching your clients create a public relations disaster entirely of their own making. A disaster you had no control over. A disaster born from Meghan's alleged need for validation and Harry's inability to hold himself together at a party. Sources say Meredith's resignation came within days of this fiasco. And can you blame her? How do you spin that story? How do you protect a client who reportedly manufactures their own crises and then expects you to clean up the mess? But here is the part that truly reveals the dysfunction at the heart of this operation. According to insiders, when the fallout began, someone had to take the blame. And it certainly was not going to be Meghan. It never is. The finger pointing started immediately. And suddenly the communications team found themselves in the crosshairs for a problem they did not create. And that blame game is about to get even uglier. The sources are finally talking, and what they are revealing paints a devastating portrait of life inside the Sussex operation. This is not just one disgruntled former employee venting frustrations. This is a chorus of voices all saying the same thing. Working for Harry and Meghan is a nightmare, and when things go wrong, someone always has to pay. The first source confirmed what many suspected. Meredith Mains handed in her resignation in mid-November, just days after the Kris Jenner disaster exploded across the internet. The timing was not coincidental. It was cause and effect. The communications chief watched her clients create chaos, watched the blame get deflected, and decided she had seen enough. But it is the second source who truly pulled back the curtain. According to this insider, Meredith's entire tenure was an absolute disaster from the very beginning. Not because she lacked talent or experience. The woman ran communications for Google and Hulu. She managed American Idol talent. Her credentials are impeccable. No, the disaster stemmed entirely from the impossible task of representing clients who refused to be managed. If she did in fact quit, the source revealed, then she is getting out to save face before it gets worse. She is telling others that she is helping with the transition, but this does not scream amicable to me. Read between those lines. That is not the description of a mutual parting. That is someone fleeing a sinking ship before it drags her reputation down with it. And then came the third source with perhaps the most chilling revelation yet. When anything negative comes out, someone has to pay. It is a miserable and impossible job. Meghan will get disappointed by one thing and then ice someone out. She will never let you live it down or forget how you let her down. Let that sink in. According to this insider, the Duchess does not simply move past disappointments. She does not chalk up failures to circumstance or bad luck. She holds grudges. She freezes people out. She makes absolutely certain that anyone who she perceives as having failed her knows exactly how worthless they have become in her eyes. Does this sound familiar? It should, because this is the exact same pattern we heard about during the Duchess dictator scandal in 2024. The icing out, the silent treatment, the emotional punishment inflicted on staff members who dare to disappoint. It is a cycle that repeats endlessly, and it explains precisely why 11 publicists have now walked out those Montecito doors. Some observers have compared the Sussex operation to the dysfunction surrounding Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz, but honestly, that comparison might be too generous. At least the Peltz-Beckham drama stays relatively contained. Harry and Meghan have turned professional destruction into an art form, burning through careers and reputations with alarming consistency. And when you look at the full scope of their staff exodus, you realize Meredith Mains is just the latest casualty in a very long list. 11 publicists in 5 years. Stop and truly absorb that number. This is not normal. This is not even close to normal. In any functioning organization, that level of turnover would trigger emergency board meetings, independent investigations, and serious questions about leadership. But in the land of Montecito, it has simply become business as usual. The parade of departures reads like a casualty list from some communications battlefield. Ashley Hansen served as global press secretary and managed to survive for 2 years before stepping down in 2024. She left to start her own consultancy firm, which insiders say is code for escaping with her sanity intact. Emily Robinson took on the director of communications role and lasted an astonishing 4 months before she too headed for the exit. 4 months. That is barely enough time to learn where the coffee machine is located, let alone implement any meaningful strategy. Then came the mass exodus of June 2025. When Meredith Mains launched her new communications team, she did so over the professional graves of Kyle Boulia, the Los Angeles-based deputy press secretary, and Charlie Gibson, the UK press officer. Both concluded their work with Archwell in what was described as a restructuring. But restructuring implies planning. Restructuring implies strategy. What happened at Archwell looks far more like chaos, and these are just the names we know about. Sources close to the operation claim the couple has burned through 28 total staff members since relocating to California in 2020. 28 people who took jobs believing they would be working for global icons. One insider described the environment in devastating terms. It is a miserable and impossible job. Those are not the words of someone who simply found a better opportunity elsewhere. Those are the words of someone who experienced genuine professional trauma. The Sussex Survivors Club has become something of a dark joke within PR circles. Former employees reportedly stay in contact with one another, bonding over shared experiences that outsiders can barely comprehend. They swap stories about the 5 a.m. emails, the impossible demands, the blame that inevitably lands on anyone except the principals themselves. It would almost be funny if it were not destroying real careers. And here is what makes this pattern truly inexcusable. Harry and Meghan know exactly how this looks. They know that every departing publicist reinforces the narrative that they are impossible to work for. They know that headlines screaming about their 11th PR exit only deepen their reputational problems, yet nothing changes. The cycle continues. New publicists arrive with optimism and credentials, only to discover that no amount of professional excellence can fix clients who refuse to be managed. Meredith Mains walked into this disaster with one of the most impressive resumes in the industry, and even she could not survive 12 months. This was not some junior publicist learning the ropes. This was not an inexperienced communications assistant who got in over her head. Meredith Mains came to the Sussex operation with a resume that would make most executives weep with envy, and even she could not make this work. Before Montecito swallowed her career whole, Meredith built an impeccable reputation across some of the most demanding industries in America. She led communications at Hulu during its explosive growth period. She navigated the complex media landscape at Google, one of the most scrutinized companies on the planet. She worked with Lightseed Venture Partners, handling communications for high-stakes investments worth billions. She even managed talent for American Idol, juggling the egos and demands of entertainment personalities at the peak of their fame. This woman knew how to handle difficult clients. She knew how to manage crisis situations. She knew how to craft narratives that protect and elevate public figures facing intense media pressure. And yet within 12 months of joining the Sussex team, she was done. Industry insiders raised eyebrows from the very beginning. According to sources who spoke after her hiring was announced in February 2025, there were concerns about whether her tech and venture capital background would translate to the unique challenges of representing Harry and Meghan. One source noted that her experience differed significantly from the communications efforts typically associated with the couple. But Meredith was accomplished enough that most believed she could adapt. And to her credit, she did achieve tangible results during her brief tenure. Sources credit her with successfully launching Meghan's podcast With Love Meghan. She oversaw the rollout of the Netflix television show. She managed the couple's broader philanthropic messaging during a critical transition period for Archewell. By any normal standard, these would be considered wins. But her most significant achievement was also her most controversial. In September, paparazzi captured Meredith at a private meeting with King Charles's director of communications. The gathering at a Mayfair members club was seen as a tentative attempt to reopen dialogue between the palace and the Sussexes. Many believed Meredith herself tipped off photographers to ensure the meeting became public knowledge. It was a bold strategic move designed to signal that reconciliation remained possible. And then Harry destroyed everything. Within days of that carefully orchestrated moment, the prince jetted off to Ukraine for a photo opportunity that generated terrible headlines. He gave an interview to The Guardian, a newspaper openly hostile to the monarchy. Every ounce of goodwill Meredith had painstakingly built evaporated in an instant. Sources say she was devastated. She had engineered a genuine breakthrough, a face-to-face summit between father and son, only to watch her client squander it completely. The Sun newspaper obtained details of private conversations. A brutal war of words erupted. And suddenly, Meredith found herself managing a crisis that her own principles had manufactured. What happened next inside that Montecito mansion reveals the true horror of working for these two. The whispers had circulated for years, but in September 2024, The Hollywood Reporter published what many consider the most damaging expose of the Sussex operation ever committed to print. Anonymous sources painted a picture so disturbing that it made international headlines within hours, and the central claim was impossible to ignore. "Everyone is terrified of Meghan." That quote landed like a grenade. According to the insider who spoke to the publication, the Duchess does not simply disagree with staff members who offer unwelcome advice. She belittles them. She intimidates them. She creates an atmosphere of such pervasive fear that employees walk on eggshells every single day, never knowing when they might become the next target. She belittles people. She does not take advice. Those 11 words from an anonymous source confirmed what many had long suspected. The Sussex operation is not a professional workplace. It is a minefield where one wrong step can end careers and shatter confidence. But here is what makes this truly explosive. These allegations did not emerge in a vacuum. They echoed claims that first surfaced back in 2018, when Meghan was still a working member of the royal family. Multiple sources at the time accused the Duchess of bullying behavior toward palace staff. The allegations were serious enough that Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly intervened, speaking directly with Meghan about her treatment of household employees. Buckingham Palace launched an investigation, and then something remarkable happened. Nothing. The findings were never publicly disclosed. The results vanished into some bureaucratic void, leaving the public to wonder what exactly investigators discovered behind those palace walls. Former employees eventually began referring to themselves as the Sussex Survivors Club. Think about that name for a moment. Survivors, not alumni, not former colleagues, survivors. As if working for Harry and Meghan was something to be endured and escaped rather than experienced and appreciated. Reports emerged about Meghan's infamous 5 a.m. emails to staff, messages sent in the dark hours of the morning, demanding immediate action on whatever issue had captured her attention. One source told Vanity Fair that nobody knows when Meghan sleeps, joking darkly that she might be an alien who opens the refrigerator at 4 in the morning and eats raw liver. The Duchess has pushed back forcefully against these characterizations. Through her representatives, she has dismissed the allegations as a calculated smear campaign designed to undermine her reputation. She insists that the negative stories are manufactured by enemies who cannot accept her success or her marriage to Prince Harry. But here is the problem with that defense. When 11 publicists flee in 5 years, the pattern speaks for itself. When multiple former employees form support groups, the pattern speaks for itself. When sources across different organizations and different time periods all describe the same toxic behaviors, the pattern becomes impossible to deny. And Meredith Mains just became the latest professional to discover that pattern firsthand. But she was not the only departure making headlines. Meredith Mains was not the only casualty of this communications catastrophe. In a devastating double blow that landed within the same news cycle, Method Communications also concluded their work with the Sussexes. The entire firm walked away after just 7 months. 7 months. That is not a completed contract. That is an escape. Method Communications was supposed to be the secret weapon. This was not some dusty old public relations firm stuck in traditional media thinking. Method specialized in influencers. They understood the digital landscape. They knew how to make content go viral and how to position clients for the social media age. They pitched themselves as an organization that challenges the status quo, which sounded perfectly aligned with the Sussex brand of disruption and modernity, and they could not last even a year. Sources say Method was brought in to complement Meredith's traditional communications approach with edgy, youth-focused strategies. They were the team behind some of the more attention-grabbing moments of 2025, the baby mama dance that generated buzz across social platforms, the attempts to position Meghan alongside businesswoman Emma Grede, the push to make the Duchess appear relevant to younger demographics who might not care about royal titles. But no amount of trendy marketing can overcome fundamental problems with the product itself. When your clients generate negative headlines faster than you can spin positive ones, when they undermine carefully planned strategies with impulsive decisions, when they refuse to take professional advice, even the hippest influencer agency in America cannot save you. The simultaneous departures sent shockwaves through entertainment and communications circles. Losing your chief communications officer is damaging enough. Losing your entire external PR firm at the same time suggests something far more serious. This was not restructuring. This was abandonment. In response to this crisis, the Sussexes have consolidated their remaining communications infrastructure. Liam Maguire, previously serving as UK and Europe Director of Communications, will now assume expanded responsibilities as lead for all communications matters globally. Sources say Maguire favors a different strategic approach, one focused on emphasizing the couple's global humanitarian status while reducing their exposure to negative press coverage. But industry observers are skeptical. Consolidating under one person is what organizations do when they are cutting costs, not when they are thriving. It is a contraction move, not an expansion strategy. And given the pattern of departures that has plagued this operation, how long before Maguire himself decides enough is enough? Some sources are being blunt about what this restructuring really means. This is damage control. This is not about building something new. This is about managing the decline of a brand that has failed to deliver on its enormous promise. The Sussexes arrived in California with Netflix deals, Spotify contracts, and the full attention of Hollywood. They were supposed to build an entertainment empire. Instead, they are shrinking their team and hoping fewer people means fewer leaks about what really happens behind closed doors. And the financial picture is even more troubling. The staff departures tell one story. The financial numbers tell another. And when you combine them, the picture that emerges is absolutely damning. Archewell is not growing. Archewell is shrinking. And the Sussexes appear to be scrambling to hide just how bad things have become. The foundation recently announced a significant rebrand. Archewell will now operate as Archewell Philanthropies under a fiscal sponsor model. To casual observers, this might sound like meaningless corporate restructuring. But to anyone who understands nonprofit operations, this is a massive red flag. A fiscal sponsor model means reduced overhead, fewer full-time staff, and less independent control over operations. It is what organizations do when they cannot sustain traditional foundation infrastructure. Sources confirm that staff redundancies accompanied this transition. Junior administrative roles were eliminated. The operation that was supposed to rival major global philanthropies is now operating with a skeleton crew, and the income numbers explain exactly why. When Harry and Meghan first launched Archewell, money flowed in at an impressive rate. Reports indicate the foundation received between $10 and $13 million in its first year. That seemed promising. That seemed like the foundation of something sustainable. But then reality set in. The following year saw donations plummet to around $2 million. A slight recovery brought numbers back to approximately $5 million, then another collapse to $2 million again. Do you see the pattern? There is no consistent donor base. There is no reliable income stream. There is no growth trajectory. Archewell lurches from year to year with wildly unpredictable funding, making long-term planning virtually impossible. And when the charitable donations dry up, what do Harry and Meghan do? They send Harry out to hustle for cash. The prince has become a paid appearance machine. His stint on Stephen Colbert was reportedly lucrative. His Toronto speaking engagement about property generated substantial fees. The Jelly Roll tattoo stunt brought in money. These are not passion projects. These are desperate attempts to shore up funds for a lifestyle and operation that costs far more than it generates. Sources say the couple has even resorted to selling access to themselves. Reports emerged of dinners priced at $100,000 per seat, with proceeds theoretically benefiting their charitable work. $100,000 just to eat a meal with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That is not philanthropy. That is monetizing whatever celebrity cachet they have left. The contrast with their initial ambitions could not be more stark. When they signed their mega deals with Netflix and Spotify, Harry and Meghan genuinely believed they were building an entertainment empire. They thought the money would gush in endlessly. They thought corporate America would throw unlimited resources at anything bearing the Sussex name. Instead, Netflix views them as a disappointment. Spotify already severed ties, and the foundation that was supposed to cement their humanitarian legacy is cutting staff and restructuring to survive. But the entertainment failures go even deeper than the charity struggles. Remember when Netflix was supposed to be a partner? Remember when Meghan herself used that exact word, proudly declaring that the streaming giant wanted to collaborate with her as an equal? Those days are gone. According to sources close to the situation, Netflix is done pretending this relationship is working. The With Love Meghan show was supposed to be a triumphant showcase for the Duchess, a lifestyle program where she could demonstrate her expertise in cooking, entertaining, and gracious living. Meredith Mains worked tirelessly to launch it properly. The publicity rollout was professional, the timing was strategic, and the result was a disaster. Critics savaged the show, comment sections filled with mockery, viewers tuned in for curiosity and tuned out from boredom. The program that was meant to establish Meghan as the next Martha Stewart instead reinforced every negative perception about her being inauthentic and out of touch. You cannot convince audiences you are relatable while arranging elaborate wicker gift baskets filled with items most families cannot afford. But the Netflix troubles extend far beyond one failed cooking show. The Girl Scout cookie film that Archwell Productions developed was shopped around desperately for distribution. And here is the truly humiliating part. Netflix passed. The company that already has a deal with the Sussexes, the company that has paid them tens of millions of dollars, looked at this project and said no thank you. When your own contracted partner rejects your work, you have a serious quality problem. The Bloomberg interview was supposed to showcase Meghan as a serious businesswoman. Instead, it became another embarrassment. Sources claim she refused to provide concrete facts and figures about As Ever, her lifestyle brand. She declined to discuss manufacturing details or business fundamentals. Without substance, the interview devolved into fluff about duchesses and titles, leaving financial journalists bewildered about why they had bothered. Drew Barrymore offered a friendly platform for promotion. Meghan turned it into a controversy about her surname, snapping at references to Markle when she apparently preferred Sussex. The focus shifted entirely away from the products she was supposed to be selling. And the A-list that once seemed curious about the royal refugees, they have largely moved on. The Clooneys are not making appearances at Montecito. The Obamas have maintained careful distance. The celebrity friends who attended the wedding have faded into polite silence. Even the Jenner photo fiasco revealed how desperate the Sussexes have become for validation from famous faces. Sources say Netflix executives are simply waiting now, waiting for something dramatic enough to justify the investment they have already made, waiting for the divorce documentary, waiting for Meghan My Story, the tell-all that would finally deliver ratings worth the enormous checks they have written. Until then, the Sussexes remain trapped in a relationship where their partner has lost faith but cannot yet walk away. It is a humiliating limbo for a couple who once believed Hollywood would embrace them as royalty. And the brutal truth is becoming impossible to escape. 11 publicists, 28 staff members, collapsed Netflix projects, a shrinking foundation, a PR firm that fled after 7 months. At what point do we stop looking for external explanations and accept the obvious? Harry and Meghan are the problem. They have always been the problem. And until they accept that reality, nothing will change. Think about it this way. If someone gets divorced 11 times, at what point do we stop blaming their partners? If a business cycles through 11 communications directors, at what point do we stop questioning the employees and start questioning the leadership? The pattern is undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming. And yet the Sussexes continue deflecting blame onto everyone except themselves. It is not the British press. It is not the palace. It is not racist institutions or jealous courtiers or a media conspiracy determined to destroy them. It is the two people at the center of every single disaster. The two people who create crises through impulsive decisions and then expect professionals to magically clean up the mess. The two people who reportedly ice out staff members over single disappointments and hold grudges that poison working relationships. You cannot polish clients who refuse to cooperate. You cannot craft positive narratives for principals who undermine every strategy. You cannot fix crazy. And according to source after source, That is exactly what these publicists have been attempting for 5 impossible years. The Queen herself reportedly had to intervene over Meghan's treatment of palace gardeners. Staff members describe walking on eggshells, never knowing when they might trigger the Duchess's displeasure. The 5 a.m. emails have become industry legend. The Sussex Survivors Club exists because former employees needed support processing their experiences. And what have Harry and Meghan learned from any of this? Absolutely nothing. They will hire another publicist. That person will arrive with optimism and impressive credentials. They will spend months attempting the impossible task of reshaping the Sussex image, and eventually they too will reach the same conclusion that 11 predecessors reached before them. This cannot be fixed from the outside because the problem lives inside. Sources say Meghan would spend whatever it takes to make herself look good. Money is not the issue. Talent is not the issue. The revolving door exists because the principals reject advice, manufacture crises, and blame everyone except themselves when things collapse. Harry could have been the beloved rogue prince who found happiness in California. Meghan could have been the biracial American actress who modernized royal expectations. Together, they could have built something genuinely meaningful. Instead, they have constructed a monument to dysfunction, burning through goodwill and professional relationships at a pace that defies comprehension. Meredith Mains escaped with her reputation barely intact. The next communications director is already being set up for failure, and the cycle will continue until Harry and Meghan finally look in the mirror and accept what the rest of the world already knows. So what do you think? Can this couple ever change, or are they destined to keep repeating the same mistakes forever? Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you won't believe what is coming next.